Welcome to Design4Solar. The following is a tutorial covering the 120% rule, otherwise known as NEC Article 690.64b2. Here is the text of the 120% rule taken directly from the NEC. The sum of the ampere ratings of overcurrent devices in circuits supplying power to a busbar or conductor shall not exceed 120% of the rating of the busbar or conductor. Crystal clear, right? End of tutorial. Not quite. Like a lot of the NEC, the wording here is a bit confusing. So don't feel bad if you didn't get it the first time. Most people don't. Most people have to read this several times before it even begins to make sense. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by going through some examples and look at how this actually works out in practice. Let's start by drawing our service meter. Okay, this is the meter coming in from the utility and our main service panel. Now let's draw in the main disconnect. Let's say this service is rated at 100 amps. And let's say that the main disconnect is also rated at 100 amps. The L1 and the L2 feeds come in from the meter to the main disconnect, and then the main disconnect in turn feeds two bus bars for L1 and L2. Let's also say that we have a breaker, a dipole breaker connected to both L1 and L2 that's going to feed our solar. So the question is, how big can this solar breaker be? So here is the 120% rule calculation. What we do is we take the rating of the main service, which is 100 amps. We multiply that by 1.2. That gives us what? 120. And then we subtract the rating of the main breaker, or the main disconnect, which is, in this case, 100 amps. Alright, so what does that give us? 20 amps. That means in this case, our solar breaker can be up to 20 amps. So what does all this really mean? Well, what we're really talking about is we're talking about a limit on the amount of power we're feeding onto these bus bars. So this 100 amp main disconnect is controlling how much power can come in from the service in this direction. Right? So that's controlling how much is flowing in this direction from the utility. This breaker here, the solar breaker, is controlling how much power can be backfed in this direction from the inverter. Okay? So what the 120% rule is really saying is that you cannot feed more than 120% of the rating of the service onto these bus bars. Okay, let's try another example. Let's say in this case the main service is rated at 125 amps. And let's say the main breaker is rated at 100 amps. This happens to be the case at my house. So let's go through the same calculation. We take the rating of the main service, and we multiply by 1.2. That gives us 150. We then subtract the main rating of the main breaker, which is 100. Alright, so that gives us 50 amps. So now with this configuration, notice we have a lot more room for solar. Now our solar breaker can be up to 50 amps. Okay, time for you to try. I'm going to give you one. So let's say the main service is rated at 200 amps. And let's say the main disconnect is rated also at 200 amps. It's a very common situation. Alright, so stop the recording, give it a try, and then come back and we'll go over it. Alright, so just as before, we take the rating of the service and we multiply by 1.2. In this case, that gives us 240. We then subtract the rating of the main breaker, which is 200. That gives us 40 amps available for solar. Alright, I'm going to give you one more to try. Let's say the rating of the main service is 225 amps. And let's say that the rating of the main breaker is 200 amps. This one may be a little bit difficult to do in your head, so there's no shame in using a calculator. So if you need to use a calculator, go ahead and stop the tape and then come back when you have your answer. Alright, so let's work it out. So now we have the main service, which is 225 amps. We want to multiply that by 1.2. Alright, what does that give us? 225 times 1.2 is 270. Alright. Alright, so that's 270. We then subtract the rating of the main breaker, which is 200. That gives us 70 amps for solar. So the solar breaker can be as much as 70 amps. Alright, let's go back to the code itself. So Article 690.64b2. Hopefully this starts to make more sense now, right? Because what it says is the sum of the ampere ratings of overcurrent devices in circuits supplying power. Okay, so in that first part, the supplying power is key, because that says we only care about overcurrent devices, which means breakers, that are actually supplying power to those bus bars that we were looking at. Alright? So, and in the case we were looking at, the only two overcurrent devices that were supplying power were the main breaker and the solar breaker. Okay? So what they're saying is the sum of the ampere ratings of all such devices shall not exceed 120% of the rating of that bus bar. Okay? So that's what we were calculating. That concludes the Design for Solar tutorial on the 120% rule. We hope you enjoyed it, and we hope you'll come back soon to check out more of what we have to offer. Bye for now.